Welcome to Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, brought to you by Burn Production Services. Here, we explore the different ways business events can bring value to your organization, the latest technological advances in the event space, as well as providing you with actionable strategies to make a business event a success. Let's create an exceptional event experience.
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast. Today, I'm really thrilled to welcome Tavar James to the show. Tavar is the head of events and experiences at BetterUp, where he has redefined the art of event planning and integrating human transformation with remarkable experiential designs. With over a decade of experience spanning high-profile programs like American Idol and NBA events, Tavar has honed his skills in creating memorable and impactful moments for diverse audiences. At BetterUp, Tavar leads the team dedicated to bringing human transformation to organizations worldwide through meticulously crafted events that aim for self-actualization and strong community ties. His expertise extends across virtual, hybrid, in-person event formats, making him a versatile leader in today's dynamic event landscape. Tavar, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love that intro. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So you've had an incredibly dynamic career path from starting as a night auditor to now leading the events team at BetterUp. Can you walk us through your journey and what inspired you to transition into event management?
Yeah, it's a very interesting journey, and I've grown to love my career path just because it's afforded me so many different experiences. So yes, I started out as a night auditor right out of school, out of high school actually. And while I was in college, I just wanted a job where I could do my schoolwork and then just, kind of make some money and get through. So I was a night auditor at a small little courtyard hotel in Boynton Beach, Florida, which is in Palm Beach, Florida. I'm doing that for about a little under a year. And the general manager of the hotel and the director of sales and marketing, who I'm both still friends with, came up to me and said, "Hey, we love your spunk. We love your attitude. We have a sales and marketing coordinator position upstairs. Would you like to take it?" Yeah, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, "Hey, more money, why not?" So I took it. And little did I know I would love the work. And I became immediately immersed into anything and everything sales, events, and marketing and hospitality. So once I realized, I'm like, all right, I like this. I kind of have a thing for it. I'm kind of good at it. This might be able to take me somewhere. I started to kind of, make my rounds within the hospitality industry and learned how to climb the ladder pretty quickly, learned the rules of the trade. And so had a few regional roles down in Florida until finally Marriott International. They moved me to New York to take on more roles up here in New York across multiple properties until I got to my final role, which was director of events at the Ritz-Carlton here in New York. And so that was an amazing ride because, as you said, it allowed me the opportunity to work across multiple industries with multiple clients across multiple tiers of properties. So anything from select service to full service to luxury. I was able to touch in every role from front desk to making beds and housekeeping to being on the line in the kitchen. It just allowed me the experience of working on not only on the supplier side, but just working alongside people who don't always get the recognition, who are not always at the forefront of an event or of an operation. And it allowed me to be a very empathetic leader. So anyway, after hospitality, I was like, all right, I've kind of done the hospitality thing. What else? And I knew I wanted to get into corporate event planning. And so at the time, there was a role with AXA Equitable. They're now called Equitable, but at the time they were called AXA Equitable, which is a financial services firm. They pretty much were looking for a head of events and did not think I was going to get the job. I pretty much was like, nah, they probably want someone with financial services background. And my partner at the time was like, just do it. You never know. I think you can do this. Just do it. And luckily, I was exactly what they were looking for. They wanted someone with hospitality background experience because a lot of the events they do are incentive trips and kickoffs. And so they wanted someone who understood service and white glove service. And so it turned out I was exactly what they were looking for. Was there for about 6.5 years and built a really strong corporate events and experiential marketing function, reporting into the chief marketing officer. And after about 6.5 years, you look around and you're like, the team's kind of running on autopilot. I'm like, I don't know if they need me anymore. Like, what am I doing here? And so that is when Riskified reached out to me about a global role, which for me in my career, I knew, okay, that's next. I want to be able to lead a global team. I want to be able to scale out into tech. And so that was my door into tech. And I led a team of 11 across the globe in all major markets, EMEA, APAC, North America, and Latin America at Riskified. And I led not only events, but I also led field marketing, which was just a one-up to all of the work that I was doing at Equitable from a marketing perspective. And then after being at Riskified for about a year and a half, I saw an opportunity at BetterUp, and I've always loved the brand at BetterUp. I've always loved the events that they do. I love the work that they're doing as far as like human transformation and giving companies the tools and resources they need to equip their employees to be able to perform at peak performance. Like all of that speaks very organically to me and very genuinely to me. And so that's where I'm at right now. I lead an events team where we handle all types of events from small dinners all the way up to our flagship event, which is Uplift, which could be north of 2,000 people. It's been a fun ride. Been a really fun ride.
So, I mean, you've managed events for a lot of diverse sectors, including high-profile programs, as we mentioned, for American Idol and NBA events. What have been some of those defining moments for you, and what achievements are you most proud of?
There's one achievement that I would say really, really struck a chord with me in a good way, where I was like, okay, I'm on the right path. And it's when I was the senior event manager at the New York Marriott Brooklyn Bridge, which is one of the largest hotels in New York City. And I had just moved to New York and taken on the events role there. And I was still very unsure of my position in the hospitality industry. And like, am I doing a good job? Am I doing the right thing? Do I got this, right? And so we had our company, Marriott had their end of the year banquet at the hotel. And the general manager was giving out end of the year awards. And I still have the awards sitting right next to me. And he called my name as the GM Leadership Award for the year. And it was pretty much the highest award that you can get. And I was literally shocked because I had no idea that I was going to get that award. And that was a moment in my career where I was like, okay, Tavar, you're onto something. Like, people see you probably better than you see yourself. They see the potential. They see that you have leadership skills, because it was a GM Leadership Award, meaning it's someone that the company sees not just as someone who's a rock star at their job, but someone who one day will be a leader. And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. Is like, okay, Tavar, you need to ride this wave really, really hard, because you're onto something and people like what they're seeing, and you're enjoying it too, right? So it's like, okay, you're onto something. So I think that was a pivotal moment for me. And then I think just overall, the path from financial services to tech has really been pivotal for me, because it's opened up the paradigm of events and how different they are, and the suite of events in our industry. So when you talk about, like, at the financial firm, I was doing, sales kickoffs, I was doing incentive trips, I was doing leadership forums, I was doing retreats, I was doing board meetings, I was doing continuing education, learning and development, those types of events. And then in tech, your events are a lot more go-to-market focused, a lot more marketing focused, a lot more sales focused. And so that shift in mindset, not to say that I wasn't doing that at Equitable, we were still doing that stuff, but it's different in tech. And it's different when you're part of an organization where event marketing is such an important marketing lever that it's the number one priority, versus at the financial firm, it's a lever, but it's not the number one lever. So that was a big shift for me, a welcomed shift, a welcomed learning, but a learning nonetheless, because I had to quickly adapt to a different type of event leadership. And it really helped me, like, build some muscles that I didn't know I had.
Yeah, I really love that. Especially the idea of that reinforcement of that you were doing something right. In that story you were just saying about getting that award, that GM Leadership Award, that it was that, I think that a lot of people in this industry sometimes want to, push the envelope or do something different, but there's a sense of imposter syndrome that comes into it that needs that external validation.
Yes.
So I'm glad you were able to achieve that. And then, that shift that you're just talking about, going from finance to tech, and leads into an interesting question about the things that you've witnessed firsthand and the changes and evolution in the field of events. Is there anything you'd like to share insights wise on the most significant transformations you've seen over the years?
I think experientially, people are really, really scratching their heads and trying to figure out, how do we elevate the most basic event standards? I think once upon a time, the basic event standards were enough. And I think people now are realizing, like, it's still enough, but there's more. And so I'm speaking everything from like the way we set rooms, to the way we do production, to the way we build programming, to the talent and the speakers that we procure. I think people are really, 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 really trying to figure out like what's next. And it's not always easy, because you're dealing with different verticals, you're dealing with different budgets, you're dealing with different stuff that people have to deal with. But I think a lot of people are scratching their heads and they're trying to answer the question around, like, what's next? Like, how do I keep this interesting? How do I keep that spark? How do I keep not only my attendees and my ICP and my targets interested in my brand, but how do I keep them engaged from an events perspective? So I think that question needs to be asked.
Let's talk about how you lead through that kind of change. So, there's a lot of rapid technological and social changes affecting the events industry. How have you adjusted your leadership approach to keep your team agile and responsive with those changes?
I think, listen, you gotta let people fly, man. Like, at the end of the day, events people, marketing people, we're creative beings. Like, at the core of who we are, we're creative. And one of the things I try to do all the time is just give my team the space to create. I give them the space to win. I give them the space to fail. I just give them space. And I also make sure that I try my best to support them, not only personally, but professionally as well, it's hard depending on what industry you work for, what company you work for, what budget you're dealing with. But a good example is, like, I always give my team, everyone on my team gets one industry organization that I would pay for out of my budget, like the membership fee. And I give them one industry event that I would pay for out of my budget a year, whether it be SEMA, PCMA, IMEX, Site, MPI, whatever fills your cup, I am willing to support that out of my own budget. And that is my way of saying, get out there, build not only your own brand, but build your understanding of the business, because that you're only better for me and for the company if you're your best. So I first and foremost make sure I don't clip anyone's wings. I want people to fly. And then I also try to support people personally and professionally, because the reality of it is that no matter how much I'm up to speed with the business and up to speed with event marketing or events in general and just marketing in general and how the world is evolving, like, it doesn't matter how much I'm up to speed on it. Your team has to have that same hunger to be up to speed with it as well. Like, you can't do that for them. So the only thing that I can do is really just give them the space to fly and support them when they want to get out there and do things. And so I try to do that.
So, given some of the sort of leadership changes you've implemented, how do you structure your communication strategies to ensure clarity and prevent misunderstanding during those changes? Are there specific tools that you used, or maybe a recent scenario where effective communication has led to that successful outcome that you're trying to push onto your team in their learning and development?
I think the more recent example was when we had to onboard a new event technology platform. And it was a break from what the company has been using. And so there was a little bit of resistance to making this change, just because it's new and it's unfamiliar, and, all that stuff that comes with a new tool or a new resource or a new platform. And so I'm very big on crawl, walk, run. And so I tried to make sure that the team is well equipped with the why behind the change, right? Because I think, one of the things that frustrates teams more than anything is when decisions are made and they don't feel like they were consulted about making that decision. So it's like, well, did anyone talk to us about it? Like, we love that platform. Why are we using, right? And so, but the reality of it is that they can't be part of every conversation and every decision. So what I try to do is I try to create clarity around the why. And I try to make sure that I'm giving my team as much of a heads up as possible when changes are among us. And I try to make sure that I give them the space to express and share feedback and feelings, right? Which is sometimes we forget to give people an opportunity to share their feelings about things. And then I always make sure that I wrap it up with showing value as to why the change was made. Now, this is changes that I'm putting on the team, right? When it comes to just general changes within the industry, it's the same kind of approach where I try to like show the why and show how we can turn this industry change or this industry update or this industry shift into a benefit for us and our event portfolio and our marketing strategy. Because change is uncomfortable. And I know that in the events industry, things are always changing. And so there's always this feeling like you're always trying to catch up, right? Or you're always trying to be ahead of everything, which is almost damn near impossible, right? So I try to just give my team the space to like, first and foremost, express, feel things, right? And then let's turn these changes into ways that we can leverage them to do business better and smarter. And usually when you approach it from that angle, there's a little bit more of like there's less resistance. But it starts with also being confident as a leader, right? If you show sweat, if you show concern, if you show anxiety because there's a shift or there's a change, that cascades down to your team. So I always try to make sure that before I even open that Pandora's box to my team, that I'm confident in where I stand with it and how I feel about it. So that way I can carry not carry it completely, but carry a little bit of their hesitation and manage it well. But that starts with me being confident about it first.
Well, so you've met with and interacted with several other leaders and luminaries in the events industry. From your conversations, what do you think are the biggest challenges or uncertainties they're still facing when managing their teams? And moreover, how are these challenges affecting their overall team dynamics and the event outcomes?
I think you'll still hear some of those same rumblings, which is like, how do we do more with less? Budgets are being cut, right? How do we keep our teams motivated when budgets are cut? I think a lot of times leaders hear cut budgets and they're like, oh, well, that means I can't really execute on what I need to execute on. But what people don't realize is that, well, people realize it, but what I think people don't talk about enough is that cut budgets also means it reduces motivation on a team, because teams then start to feel like they don't have as much to play with. And again, we are creative people. So when you cut budgets so much and you give your teams just enough to do the basics, where they can't flex those muscles, spread those wings, and really try fun stuff and be creative and be out of the box, it starts to really stifle their excitement about the role and about the work they're doing. And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of us, where it's like, okay, how do I make sure that I'm supporting the business and supporting where the business needs to go and the business objectives, while also keeping my team motivated with budgets that are being cut 30, 40%. And I don't think anyone has the exact perfect answer. And I don't expect anyone to have the exact perfect answer, because you're dealing with human beings who have a spectrum of emotions. And it's like, we as leaders have to balance emotion with business. And that, I think, is a challenge that a lot of leaders are dealing with. And what makes it even more tough is that the industry in itself has grown so much over the past few years. There are so many people that now want to get into the events industry. Once upon a time, it was something that you kind of almost fell into, right? Now people are like going to school for this stuff and like, I want to be in it. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, the market is more tough. The market is tougher. It's harder to retain talent, because people are like, oh, you want to cut our budgets 30%? You're not letting me try this new thing I want to do. I'm going to move on to a company that has a bigger budget, right? So I think that's a big fear among leaders. And I think the other thing that leaders are really struggling with is just quieting the noise and not becoming too distracted by everything that's going on, whether it be AI, whether it be all of the event technology that's out there, whether it be understanding like the career path for events and how that's changing, whether it be how to appeal to the upcoming generation of not only event attendees, but event professionals, right? There's so much noise out there, mergers, acquisitions, like it's hard to keep track sometimes. So I think us as leaders, we're craving for like things to just, I don't want to say settle, because I don't know if they're ever settle, but I think we're just craving for a little bit of like normalcy, right? Where I think right now things are just all over the place. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing that our industry is what I like to say, our industry is popping right now. That's great. But I think it makes it's a little bit of a headache for us leaders, because it's like once we finally get settled in a tool, or we get settled in a way of working, or we get settled in a trend, a month later, 2 months later, there's something new popping up. And it's like, well, darn, now how do I leverage this? Because no one wants to be left behind, right? You don't want to be that company that's in the archaic ages and doing things that no one is doing anymore, right? You don't want to be that company that's not leveraging AI or having those conversations around AI. So it's a lot of balancing between team motivation and then keeping yourself motivated and not getting bogged down by all the noise in the industry.
Yeah, it's interesting that we were just at a conference. You just mentioned sort of people coming in and into the industry, and back I believe when you and I probably started. Well, I remember when I started, there was no formal education for the events industry. You either came from a world of hotels or you came from theater and performance. And as the industry has evolved, we have created courses and university degrees and soon to be master's degrees in this and certifications. But one thing that we noticed at this conference was the audience was asked, how long they've been in the industry. And it was like 80%. And I think Julius Solaris just came out with a interesting statistic that his data showing that 70% of the workforce in events has been in the events industry for less than 5 years. So when we start talking about how we're leading teams and developing teams, then we can't make any assumptions. We can't make any of that. This is how we've always done it. And that sort of knowledge sharing really needs to be doubled down on, so that we're bringing those people up to speed and growing those teams. And to your point, if we constantly challenge them with diminishing budgets and we're clipping their wings, then I don't think that the industry is going to grow, because we're going to lose people.
Yeah. It's what I call, Julius and I have had this conversation before. And I call it the changing of the guard. We are really among a serious changing of the guard in the events industry. The people that have been in the industry for decades are retiring, right? And so they're, the generations that are like midway through their careers or somewhat, senior in their careers, they're stepping up to those more senior roles. They're becoming more tenured. And then you have the new people coming in, right? So it's a serious changing of the guard. But see, the changing of the guard in the past has been okay because there hasn't been so much innovation and technology. Like, it's like, okay, they're kind of the same. So it's all right. It's just new people taking the lead, right? But the changing of the guard now comes with so much that it's like, we have to find a way to not only welcome a changing of the guard, but also meet the industry where it needs to be, not meet it where it is, right? That's where the events industry is different than other stuff. Like other industries, you want to meet it where it's at. We want to meet it where it needs to be. And I think that's the struggle right now, is everyone is like, well, where do we need to be? Where do we need to be to make our events more exciting, make trade shows or exhibitions more exciting? Or where do we need to be to attract and retain talent? Where do we need to be to make sure that our teams are, getting the education they need and getting the networking that they need? Where do we need to be to make sure that companies are seeing the value of events and not cutting our budgets by 30, 40%? That's the question that a lot of people are asking. And yeah, we got to figure it out. And we'll figure it out. I think the people that are, at the helm of the industry right now, a lot of these luminaries that you speak of are really smart, awesome people that I think are really passionate about the business, like me, where it's like, we're ready to have those tough conversations. And we're ready to start to kind of like really create or outline at least, or better yet, we're ready to kind of create that foundation of what we think the event industry should be today and where it needs to be 10 years from now.
Yeah, I'm going to use a massive Canadianism here and use, because I love that idea of not being responsive to where we need to be today, but start to think of where we need to be tomorrow. That was Wayne Gretzky's big thing. He didn't skate to where the puck is. He was skated to where the puck is going to be.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the most Canadian metaphor I could possibly use. All I needed was a moose in there. But I think that that's a really smart point, and that, if we are, I think the industry it has been growing up over the last few years. Certainly, it leaps and bounds. Over the pandemic, certainly we had to adapt really quickly, and everybody who didn't have that muscle learned how to use that muscle. Over the last, but we need to continue that. We need to be skating to where the puck's going to be, and really thinking forward and preparing for that. Because I think it surprised us as an industry that now we're sitting with, as you said, 70% of this industry is the changing of the guard. And how do we prepare that? And how do we nurture that so that we have a vibrant industry when we I'd like to retire one day. And so I want to make sure that my teams and the people that I work with are prepared to take that on. And if we're not investing in that, then we're just going to let that, the industry is going to crumble under its weight.
Yeah. And I think it's, a big piece of that is creating clear career paths for people who really want to get into our industry. I think that's another thing. It's I think a lot of people come into the industry, they see the type of work it is and they run, because there's no real clear career path in events. Every company is different with how you climb the ladder. And it's almost kind of like hospitality, where you start to feel like, well, I got to jump from company to company to really climb. So it would be great if the events industry can create some sort of standard of a career path that companies can adopt to say, okay, this is and that's, I think that's going to be a big help for our industry. Is we rely too much on corporations to tell us what events should be. Right? You go into a company and the HR team tells you, this is the career path with events. We're going to just tie you to project management because you're just like project management, right? Versus we need to be the ones going to them and saying, no, this is the career based off of the research that has been done, the education that's out there, the coursework that's out there, the hours that people put in, and the job that's done. This is the proper career path for an events professional. And so I think that's what needs to happen.
You are 100% right. I'm just going to go off on a tangent for 2 seconds here, because there was I can't remember what the interview was or what the platform was, but I was listening to an interview with the CEO of the San Diego Tourist Bureau, and what struck me in that conversation was she was speaking about the management training program that she went into, which is something that, especially in the event and the corporate events industry, we work with clients that participate in this all the time. We work for big financial firms that, pluck people with potential out of, out of college, and then they put them on this track to teach them how to be leaders and how to grow that industry over years and years. So they'll spend 5 to 10 years of the first part of their career learning how to be leaders in that industry. And we work with these people all the time. We help them frame their messaging and that program in an innovative way in a ballroom somewhere in the middle of Phoenix. Yet we as an industry don't do that. We, some associations try. I think that they're, it's sort of hit or miss sometimes in their professional development. It tends to be hard skill development rather than soft skill and leadership development. So, I think we as an industry, that's the next step we need to do. We need to build as an industry a way to nurture leaders for tomorrow, find that leadership potential, find that innovative potential, and find a way to incubate that over years. And then I think we are, like every other industry that we serve as a B2B service industry, we can better match our development to our clients' development.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I said this at SEMA when I was on a panel on the main stage around purpose-driven leadership. And I said this to the audience is that I look forward to the day where we have more universal standards in the events industry. Right now, it depends on what industry expert declares what trend or, what travel report from whatever research or institution tells us about travel and meetings. But I really, really, really love for us to really take the time to revisit some of our industry standards and ask ourselves, what should the standard be today and for the next 10 years? Because it really is, it's shocking when you go to some of these industry events and you hear how we all work so differently. And we all have so many different standards and so many different ways of approaching events. And while that's a great thing, it's wonderful to be part of an industry that is so colorful, but it also makes it so difficult to navigate. And so I really want to see how we can be better at that.
I am 100% behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So have you noticed any innovative approaches or solutions that some leaders are experimenting to address some of these issues?
I'll be honest with you, I have not. And that probably is my fault, just not having enough conversations with other leaders about it in that depth. But, it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing MPI, PCMA, SEMA, all these other different industry organizations. I'm looking forward to seeing more in conference programming and learning and workshopping. I see a lot of these organizations building leadership cohorts to have some of these tough conversations. So that excites me to know that people are ready to start to have these conversations. But it's going to take one organization to really set the standard, whether it be the CIC, MPI, it's going to take one or all of them to just come together and say, this is the new, these are the new universal standards for events that we see from now for the next 10 years. And it has to be informed all the way from the government level, how we interact with the travel and tourism industry, right? All of that, it's a beast of a thing to take on, but I feel like it would do wonders for our industry where people can look at us, not just because I think a lot of the reason why people look at us as just glorified party planners or just project managers is because there's no standards. So people don't really have they don't have anything to hold us to say you're killing it or you're not killing it, other than the typical standards of a project manager. So I think that's why it's we really need to figure out what some standards look like so we can start to hold ourselves to some of those standards.
So just in closing our conversation, do you think that I don't want to get controversial, but I do want to challenge the idea that the CICs, the MPIs, mm-hmm. I don't think that they're doing a great job. Mm-hmm. I think, and we've brought this up on the podcast before with other guests in either conversations about education or conversations about the knowing your value, charging for creative, all of those kind of things, which is, I think, a thing that still plagues the industry, right? Mm-hmm. That there is no singular guidance or industry standard or practice that is pushed by those big organizations, mm-hmm. because I think that sometimes they are afraid. Afraid to put a line in the sand and mm-hmm. say, no one, if you want to play in the sandbox, you have to stay behind this line. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we need to, as an industry, hold our industry associations to task on that? Or do you think it's more of a grassroots thing that we need to go into these organizations and change that future?
I think it's both. Right. I think it's grassroots for sure, but we really have to depend on those big industry organizations to support the work, because they, some may say unfortunately, some may say fortunately, but they still are the voice of our industry. Right. So people that are studying in school to be in events or even in marketing, they hear the MPIs, they hear the CICs, they hear the PCMAs. That's what they're hearing. Right. So we can't do it without them. They can't do it without us. So I think it's a two-way street, right? They need to be willing and ready to listen to us, and realize that there's more to these organizations than just membership fees and an annual event, right? And we also need to be understanding that we need their platform to really get the work done. So I hope that there's a world where we can marry the two. And I just don't know where that conversation starts, to be quite frank. I don't know who would be the one to start that conversation. I don't know how that conversation starts, but, and listen, it's a tough thing to do. I know it's tough, right? Our industry is so, like the best word I can use is colorful. Our industry is so colorful. There's so many different aspects and angles and approaches, and there's just so much, which is what makes it such a great thing, but it also makes it so difficult. And so I'm not saying that it's some easy thing that's to solve within a year. Like, it may take years to solve it, but we should start. We should start that drumbeat, and that's what I'm eager for.
Great. So we always like to end these episodes with a practical step that our listeners can take. So we've got a lot of event professionals and event marketers who are listening. And I think that they're probably riled up and excited about the conversation about, like, yeah, we have to affect change. Yeah. So what practical step would you give to our listener right now to start making that change in the industry and getting prepared to, like, as we said about Gretzky, skate to where the puck is, right?
Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do first and foremost is if you are a seasoned events professional, mentor someone. Find a younger professional who's just trying to come up in the industry, or who's trying to get their bearings or trying to navigate their way. Find them, mentor them, because that is one of the best ways that you can really understand what the incoming generation of event professionals are dealing with, some of their struggles, some of their strife. So try to mentor someone. It's also your way to kind of influence the industry, the generation that's coming in. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is be a voice for the industry, not only within the industry, but really try to be a voice within the organization you work for. Really, make tactical, tangible moves in how you are influencing the organization that you work for to see events in a different way. Because if we all do a little bit more to influence the corporations or the companies that we work for to see events in a different way, you will start to see a shift. But it starts with us. And so until we can get the MPIs and the CICs and the PCMAs to create those standards and to kind of create that consistency, it's up to us to speak on behalf of the industry to say, hey, we are not glorified project managers. We are not executive assistants. We are strategic thinkers. We are marketers. We do have a voice beyond just rounds, chairs, and fish or chicken, right? So, be a voice within your corporation, within your human resources team, to say, hey, I know this is typically how we view this function, but here's what the industry really is about. So those would be the two things I would say that you can really do starting today. Mentor someone, influence them, they influence you, and be a strong voice within the company you work for so they understand what events really is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love the idea of mentorship. I think it's something that we lack in this industry. And yeah, as a senior leader, please mentor people. Mm-hmm. Like, give them the opportunity to learn. Mm-hmm. And as an internal, I love that idea of, be an advocate within your organization. Mm-hmm. And I think that applies, yes, to anybody who is in, big corporation A mm-hmm. and is dealing with HR and marketing departments and mm-hmm. senior leadership. Mm-hmm. But that also goes down to anybody in that small organization who's in an agency or whatever it is, as an independent planner, you have to advocate for your worth, yes. Right? And so I love that. So as we wrap up, Tavar, where can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch?
LinkedIn, Tavar James. I'm one of only maybe 3, but anyway, I'm the only Tavar James in the world. So Tavar James, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on posting. I have my 4 things on a Friday where I share tips, tricks, not only about the events industry, but just about being a whole person. Connect on there. I love to connect with people, so don't hesitate.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tavar.
Thanks.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Burn Production Services. To find out more about Burn Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit burnproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.